it's one of those things that was difficult starting out, but it was just for me, born out of necessity. I loved capturing videos. I loved the filming aspect. I loved sharing those videos, but I did not have the funds nor anybody I knew that could film anything. So I just did it myself. The true like DIY style. It's like if you don't have someone, just do it yourself. And because of that, I think it's overall made me a better hunter. It's made me a unique genre of photographer, and it's been something that I've actually come to enjoy as much of the hunt as like other aspects of it.
What is up, everybody? Got Jimmy to my right, and across the table, virtually in electronic communication land, we have... He's waving, folks. He's waving. If you're watching, you got to see it. Remi Warren is waving to you right now. That's a customized wave. So we got a unique one here today, Jim. It's kind of part listener question special, part tied into a really cool film that the video team put together, one of our Trailblazer films featuring Remi Warren, and kind of the topic of that film and the topic of this person's question kind of revolves around like self-filming and documenting your own hunts, which I know for me personally, for a long time always seemed like a good idea, and it is. It's super cool. You get to try and capture some memories, but I know pretty much every time I tried it, I'd be like, yeah, this is a good idea, I should go do it. And then the tripod fell over and he ran away. And I'm like, well, wait, now I really didn't document anything, and I'm just frustrated.
Yes.
So anyway, but we've got a pro with us today. So and maybe
Absolutely.
He can help me out personally with this, and also kind of talk about, I guess, your self-filming journey, Remi, and the stuff you've learned along the way, as well as anything else.
Yeah, not only do you hunt very well and in a manner that many people enjoy watching on, your show and everything, but also you've been filming all that for... I can't even fathom the amount of hours of footage you must have compiled over your time in self-filming hunts. I mean, just an abundance of...
Yeah, there's like more stuff that I've lost than probably should even talk about. But it's just like so much of it has just been trial and error. And like you said, I mean, it's just like, it's one of those things that was difficult starting out, but it was just for me, born out of necessity. I loved capturing videos. I loved the filming aspect. I loved sharing those videos, but I did not have the funds nor anybody I knew that could film anything. So I just did it myself. The true like DIY style. It's like if you don't have someone, just do it yourself. And because of that, I think it's overall made me a better hunter. It's made me a unique genre of photographer, and it's been something that I've actually come to enjoy as much of the hunt as like other aspects of it, especially being able to like share that. And, I get to see some awesome places, get to spend a lot of time hunting. So to be able to like share that with people, and I think that's like it's worth the extra pain in the ass that it is to film myself. And now I'm like used to it now. I think it's almost easier to film myself than have somebody else film me. So I'm like, now I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That is interesting. Right off the bat, I mean, we've had many different podcast topics on here where we've talked about, tips or tricks or all kinds of different methods and stuff like that around hunting. And you even mentioned like you feel it's made you a better hunter. Is that just because it's made you so much more aware of what's going on around you? The fact that you're not only just trying to like, oh, look at that over there, but you might film it as well. And
Or is it because you like actually have to stalk a mule deer twice, and so you're getting like double the experience?
It's the double whammy. It's like stalking with the cameras, then stalking with the bow, or the whole thought of like, I don't know how many times I've blown a stalk on a good deer by my release hitting my tripod leg and being like, okay, so like just paying attention to every little thing and kind of figuring out like the way I see like stalking with the camera is like, all right, I have to stalk that animal and I am a bull in a china closet. How do I make myself more sneaky? How do I approach in a way that it's not going to know? What kind of setup is going to give me the time to set up the camera? And by choosing those stalks and those things, like it's just made me find kind of like a little secret loophole on how, like when I'm not carrying a camera, I was just like, I've done some hunts recently where I was just like, I'm not going to film anything. I'm just going to go out. And I was like, wow, this is almost too easy. I'm super lethal now. This is awesome. I'm not used to this. It's like if you just had somebody like following you around with cymbals while you're hunting all the day, like a monkey on your back, just scaring away deer. And it's like you find a way to hunt with that monkey on your back. Then you don't have the monkey, and you're like, dang, I'm super sneaky. I like that.
There you go. Yeah, that's like the hunt.
And then after a day, you're like, where's that damn monkey? This isn't any fun anymore.
Yeah, it's like the hunter's version of weight training. You know, you just you essentially are training with something that makes it much more difficult. Yeah.
Exactly.
I can imagine you're like, shouldn't I be doing something right now? Like, I feel like something's missing, you know? Like, oh, it's all the extra equipment and time and hassle and challenge.
Yeah. When we were talking with Wyatt and Erik on here, who were both, talking about the photography side of things, both of them mentioned the fact that in some ways, and it even was like difficult for them to articulate or say, because you almost can't even just like go out and straight up say it, because like they were saying in some ways they almost appreciate or enjoyed photographing the hunt more than the actual hunt. But of course, you can't really ever get to that point without ever first really, really enjoying the hunting side of things. So you can't kind of have one without the other. But it does take, it seems, a special kind of breed to really enjoy doing that. And the stuff you've captured over time, Remi, has been, there's some really, really unique shots. And I think, like, I know myself, if ever I've gone out and tried to video myself doing something, generally it's like I hold the camera out and I'm like, well, that doesn't look very cool, because I'm just sort of like holding this camera here and it's all shaky, and then it's like, well, maybe I'll set it up on a tripod, and then I sort of forget that it's over there on the tripod, so I've only had one camera angle the entire time, and then I'm like, well, that's really boring, and then it's like, maybe I'll move it this one time, but then after a while you're just sort of like, I don't really get it. How are you continually finding ways to make all these videos interesting, finding unique camera angles and stuff? I mean, that all takes, you got to have an eye for it.
Yeah, I think you have a kind of a creative. I'm pretty creative in like a lot of different things. So having that creative eye, and then also just like the throw and go, where you just throw the camera out there wherever it lands, and then that's your shot. It's like, oh, that's so avant-garde. It was straight up and down, and then fell over afterwards. This is amazing. Blows my mind. But most of it's just accidental. But no, there's
belongs in a museum.
Yeah. Look, there's no film in the camera. No, I think. A lot of it is just, just having that creative eye that, I think a lot of it comes down to like also, I think some people are really good at filming, some people are really good at photography. And so I kind of started actually filming and doing photography simultaneously. So having like a good photograph, like an eye for photos, and then turning those like photos into video kind of helps a lot too. Like, thinking of like creative angles to make, you can take a picture, like 3 people could take a picture of the same thing, and somebody that kind of has that ability to capture it in a different way will make it, it'll stand out and be like, wow, that's really good. And then one might just look like a snapshot, and another one might just be, so mixing all that together and kind of having that idea of what things look like when you do it really, really helps for sure.
For sure. I know we were chatting one time, and I wish I could remember what you said, but like it stuck with me enough that I remember it, but I don't remember it. But you're like, I'm like the king of the like authentic selfie or something. Or what did I can't remember. Maybe you don't remember, but
did it come after the picture out there of like Remi scaling a mountain in a rainstorm and looking like the Grim Reaper coming up over a rock face. That's a good picture.
It's like I think it was that one that's like semi-blurred. Like, yeah, the weather looks horrible. Like, really, the last time you'd
Everything
actually want
looks
to
miserable.
be taking a picture.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think I've never really liked selfies, and I was like, or like my wife will be like, let's take a selfie. And I was like, oh, I hate selfies. And then she was like, do you know that like that's what you do? You like take 10,000 frames of selfies per second. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Okay, fine. Well, I like my kind of selfies. All right. Leave me alone.
Quit being right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We chatted with you back a little while back when we were actually in your neck of the woods, and we talked about just all the different things you've had to do as far as your kit or just getting bushy, we called it, in terms of some of the experience you've gained in as far as essentially survival goes when you're out in the wild. And one thing that I remember you brought up is the fact that in many cases you are battling gear that you have to bring in order to survive and hunt, and sort of the trade-offs of how much of that you can take versus how much of your filming equipment you need to take. And in hearing you talk about, all this loud and sort of ungainly filming equipment that you have to have on you, I mean, what is it that you find yourself out there with most commonly? Is it like a camera and a tripod, or are you rocking more than one camera? Are you using your phone a lot, or how much stuff do you have out there with you?
Oh, I got so much stuff. It's like, I mean, for when my normal like filming setup, I have my main camera, which is a Sony A7S II. I have a 50 millimeter lens, and then I have a variable lens that's like, what is it? It's like, I got it sitting here, but it's like 25 to 240 or 24 to 240. That's like the main thing. Just that camera and lens without the extra lens is about the weight of a rifle.
Oh,
and then
okay.
I carry like 1 or 2 batteries per day for that camera. Then I often have like a backup camera that's just like that I use for like long distance shots. Sometimes it just depends on the hunt, whether it's a bow hunt or a rifle hunt. I might take like another lens for like wildlife stuff, but that lens is about 7 or 8 pounds. So I always have at least the main camera and the 2 lenses. Then I have I don't really use a GoPro very often, but I always have one just in case. I haven't actually like the footage quality from them, just like the batteries are always dead and whatever. And I just kind of stopped carrying it for a while, but I always have like a secondary camera, whether it's like a handy cam or something, some kind of secondary camera, and then all the batteries for that. And a lot of times I'll also take like a small drone. So like in the camera stuff, it's about, I don't know, it's a lot of weight. I mean,
yeah,
with all the batteries, and then I have, like a backup, and then I also have like, my phone, which I use. So I don't really, I mean, I use that for other things, but, I also have like a portable charger for like the GoPros or anything like that as well. So like a secondary charger just in case, and then extra memory cards and a tripod, and then, tripod heads for every different camera. So most times I have 3 or 4 cameras with me, which is ridiculous.
Wow.
But like a lot of times if I'm stalking in, I use that secondary camera. It's like I have my A cam, which is the one I always have with me. It's high quality, whatever. And then I've got that handy cam. But if I'm stalking in, like I'll set that up and stalk in. So if something gets messed up, I've got like that as a backup or things to cut in and out of. And then I've got the camera with me. Then I put that camera on something. Then when I go to shoot, I probably take the handy cam out of my pocket and set that down as the angle on me doing that. So there's pretty much 4 cameras, and then I take the drone if I'm like somewhere where I can use it for like some extra shots, and only probably get 2 or 3 shots with that, and kind of decide why do I take this, but then I get some cool stuff and I'm like, sweet, glad I took that.
I just got
It's like 30 pounds of shit.
I just got like mega anxiety when you got to the point when you were talking about when you're about to shoot, because I'm thinking of, being on a stalk, and that's already sort of your senses are all tuned into what the animal's doing, where you are, how much noise you're making, where you're putting your each individual step, yada yada. So to set up a camera to even watch that that takes some forethought and just mental aptitude of knowing what's going on and being aware of all these things. But then if you're trying to also get a shot of you shooting, how does that work? I mean, are you quick like,
Well, I mean, seriously, like just hearing Remi like go through that list of gear. Number one, I got tired just thinking about carrying it. And then number two, like you're setting all these cameras up, and then like you said, you get to that moment of truth where you take the shot, and then all of a sudden, like, he moved. And now you've got this like breadcrumb trail of cameras that you need to like readjust because it moved, and like,
yeah, the animals, you can't just be like, cut. All right, I'm going to need you to move back there, and we're just going to start this all over again.
Yeah, usually it's like,
happen.
cut, I find another one, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, it just depends on the hunt, too, and, like, where I'm going and what I'm doing. I would say I don't make it any easier on myself. Like, if it's, like, something that I'm, like, day hunting, I actually carry way more stuff because I'm like, oh, I'm day hunting, I'll carry more. If I'm backcountry hunting, I try to... It doesn't really... it's one of those things I'm like, well, if I don't have it, I'll want it. And, every stock is different. So one, I might just be like, hey, I don't have time, but to set up, this backup camera. So I'm just going in with the main camera. But there's so many times where I've gone in and like stock something or whatever, and I couldn't get it on film. And it's like that, the time that it took to get the camera where it needs to be and focused and everything, and the deer moved out of the shooting lane or moved off or whatever, and I didn't get a shot. I know that there's like one heartbreaker that I probably now hindsight maybe should have shot, but there's like a 200-inch mule deer with my bow that I had a shot on, but I couldn't get on film, and I decided not to shoot it. So you're like, well, that's stupid. But it's like, as soon as if I go on a hunt and I'm saying to myself I'm going to film it, I have to commit, because if I don't commit, you'll always hit the easy button and you'll never get anything. And it just it's like, and it's not like saying that one time is different because it's a giant buck, but there's always an excuse of that time where it's different. And it's like because I did that for about a season, and I was like, never got anything. And then so I just had to say, look, it's all or nothing if I go out with the intent of filming it. And there's some stuff now that I just don't even have the intent of filming, or I'm like, I'm going to make an Instagram story and I'm not going to try to get the shot on film. Sweet. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Or maybe just use like a backup cam. And even on like the solo hunter stuff, there's stuff where it's like I couldn't get on the camera, but I knew I got it on a third angle, or man, I had a hunt. I stalked in like perfect. Had a GoPro and my main camera. I set the main camera up, crawled in front of it, go up, shoot the deer, go back to the camera. The heat had like fried the battery while I was crawling to the deer. That one had turned off. My GoPro had turned off, but the one that was set up like a mile away was still filming and got everything.
No way.
You never know. And then sometimes I don't do that backup. Yeah. Then sometimes you don't do that backup, and it's like the only thing you get of the shot is the GoPro thing because something failed or something got messed up. But yeah, it's a process, and I think that there's a lot of people that having seen the solo hunter thing and stuff have thought like, okay, actually self-filming is possible. That's what I think is the coolest thing about it, is like anybody can do it. We don't have equipment that's like impossible to get. I mean, because we do like, we've got pretty high quality stuff, but it doesn't really make a difference, to be honest. You can do it with anything. It's like something anybody can do. And I'm sure that there are a lot of, it's like people like to film the hunt and capture it. So to see somebody do it, it's like, okay, I can actually do that. When I first started, I was talking to someone about it, like, oh yeah, like they're like, what kind of hunting do you do? Is like, I love bow hunting mule deer. And they're like, you will never kill a spot and stock mule deer with a bow. on film. And I was like, nay, sir. I will do it with my recurve, because it's just that, like, once you've seen someone do it, you know that you could do it too.
Yeah.
But up until that point, I'd never seen anybody do anything like that. So you're like, okay, is it possible, or is it just that people don't commit to it and want to try? And I think that's, like, if you commit to it, you can do it.
Yeah, I think number one, that is super inspiring, right? And I think, like anything or hunting, I mean, like, or one component of the hunt is like you are seeking a challenge, right? And like, you know, I love to bow hunt and I love to rifle hunt, but when I commit to the bow, like, I'm committing to that challenge. And you talk about the easy button. Now, I've never hunted sheep, but I've watched a lot of, sheep, hunting TV or whatever, where a person might take the bow and the rifle. And I can tell you and if you were able to, like, actually still commit to the bow and have the rifle with you, like, my hat is off to you. But I'd say I'm not sure. I've never not seen, like, the sheep, you've worked so hard and it's 400. I mean, it's not like it wasn't challenging, right? And you got a ram that's 400 yards away. It's like, give me that gun, and like you said, you're committing to the camera and you're just like, no, I'm committing to it. Like, this is the challenge that I've set out to do. And it's like, kind of like, almost like, yeah, I want to kill one with my bow, or I want to kill one that, or whatever. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I've carried my bow on 4 sheep hunts. I had a rifle on 3 of those 4 sheep hunts with my bow. Carried both the whole time, plus my camera stuff.
Jeez.
On the 3 that I carried the rifle, I shot the sheep with a rifle. On the one that the one was an archery only tag, and I shot the sheep with a bow. And I was like, I would have got a sheep on or maybe it was only 3, but I would have got a sheep on the other ones, except for one of them I shot on the last day with a rifle. But is because you're right. You have it. And it's not that I don't like rifle hunting or don't like bow hunting. I carry both because it's like, maybe the opportunity's there. But if you really want to do it, you kind of have to commit to one. And it's just, you'll find your success that way because you don't have any other options.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's almost like, even when you're talking about, like, getting the shot, like, you're just like, you're doing things, you're going to put yourself in a different position or do something a different way to get that opportunity.
One thing I feel like I've noticed, Remi, you can speak to this better than I, but I feel like if you're going to try and commit to getting the hunt on film, in some ways it's kind of difficult to almost, let's say you are, average Jane or Joe or whatever, and don't have a hunting TV show. You're going on a few hunts a year. I feel like in a lot of ways too, it's difficult maybe to only, or what am I trying to say? You almost have to commit to more than just filming that one hunt necessarily, because, like, Remi, you get the opportunity to go on a lot of hunts, and I'm not saying that in kind of like a must be nice kind of way, because anybody can, in theory, do what you started out doing, because you're, like you explained, is very DIY. You enjoyed doing it, you enjoyed capturing it, you went out and you just did it, and you sort of, I think, I mean, at least when I've watched the story, it's a little bit of a throw all caution to the wind kind of a thing. And, but you do have, I'd say, the opportunity, or you're getting to go on multiple hunts, so you're getting to go out there and have chances at success, and many, I'm sure, chances that end up in a, we tried, right? But if somebody is, I think what I'm getting at, if somebody is going to go on 1 or 2 hunts in a year, and you want to go on that hunt to go on the hunt, right, and try and, ultimately get a kill or get this amazing experience on the hunt, in that case, it's probably going to be a little bit difficult to commit yourself to filming it, because you're thinking to yourself, like, well, if this is my only hunt this year, yeah, I may want to record it and get the memories and stuff, but also it's hard to ever get the memories if you're not also just being on the hunt. Does that make sense? I kind of went around it a little bit, because I didn't want to say, again, like I was getting at earlier, I didn't want to say where, like, oh man, guys like Remi, or guys like the hunting public, or guys like, Tim Burnett and stuff, like, must be nice. These guys get to go on hunts all the time. Because it's like, you guys, it's your job. Like, you guys are working really hard at it, and you had to work really hard at it, and probably not take opportunities elsewhere or something like that to do what you're doing. But sometimes when I think people are like, oh, I need to get into self-filming, it's like, well, if you have a full-time job and a family and you only get to go out hunting every once in a while, it's like, might be kind of difficult for you to do.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that portion of it is, you have to decide like what you want. And it doesn't, I mean, there's no reason you have to go get it. It's like, if it's just for personal and you want to, great. I think like on the Trailblazer video, all that old footage, that was years before I did any of this stuff professionally. That was just me on my one hunt a year filming it myself and saying,
Really?
look, to myself, if I don't because I enjoyed that. That was like my thing was to go out hunting, and like I loved the hunt aspect, and I would, when I was hunting, I had certain things that I was looking for. It's like I wanted a good experience. I didn't want to shoot something on the first day, and like adding the camera filming made it harder. And it's like, okay, if I can commit to it, and then I realized, man, I never got the stuff that I wanted, and I honestly just made those videos. Like for every Christmas would just like give them to my dad or like play them with friends. And even like I've got a lot of friends that we did a lot of filming together, and we still do, like a lot of my friends we just like make these videos that we just share with each other that are not anywhere else. It's just to share the trip and the hunt. And I know there's a lot of people out there like that, and they're like, man, how do I get a little bit better at it? And it's just like, to get a little bit better at it, you just have to commit to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, all the stuff, I mean, I have countless hunts that I've done that were just like boxes and boxes of tapes that are literally my 1 or 2 hunts a year. It was like, hey, I'm out hunting all the time because I'm guiding, but when you're guiding, you're working during hunting season.
Yeah.
I got 1 day a week to go hunt myself or whatever. And it's like weekend warrior status, and I've got the camera with me and I'm filming it. I don't think it was used, but there's some, like my first solo elk that I got myself. I was like 18, filmed myself. I had 2 days to hunt that season between guiding. I was like, went out, filmed the everything, and like, yeah, sweet. Like got an elk kill on film. This is like, 20 plus years ago. So it is doable. Like you just got to understand, to me, I was like, I really wanted to shoot an elk because I like eating elk and I really want an elk, but I also really wanted to film it. And so I kind of committed to both and got really good, like got better at it because I practiced more.
Right.
The times that I did have. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, in that case, I guess really realistically, it does come down to like, if you want to film the stuff, then yeah, fully commit to it.
Yeah, commit to it. And like you said, like the more you do it, the more you, like you said, you use practice. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Like you do it, and then, I'm sure you come away from the hunt and you get certain footage and you're like, oh, that's really cool footage, but you know exactly what happened. You're like, oh my gosh, there was this one thing that maybe I didn't get. Like I need to, and it was beautiful, or like, no, I need to capture that because that's an integral or important part of the hunt or whatever. And then the other thing I think you could look at is like, what's your motivation, right? Like, what are you trying to create? A TV show, or are you trying to share some awesome memories that you can look back on with your family and share with your buddies? And I think you do it different ways. Yeah,
I mean, I honestly think like the biggest tip, whether you're doing it just like you just want to have some cool stuff, or you just want to like remember that. I mean, maybe you draw a tag and it's like, this is going to be your only tag of that. Like you drew a special elk tag in Nevada or something. It's like you may never get that tag again. Yeah, you want to focus on the hunt and being successful and enjoying the experience, but you also want to have some memories of it. So you want it to be unobtrusive, but still like capture the things. And the easiest way to do that is like have a camera that's handy. Like everybody asks, what camera should I get? It's like literally one that you don't mind wearing outside your body, or have like, if it's in your pack, you won't use it.
Yeah.
I saved up like after high school. Like when I was in high school, I took, I kind of did like some high school and college simultaneously. And I did like video broadcast and production technology. So I was like, and so after that, I was like, man, I really like filming. I'm going to get a really good camera and try to like do stuff. And I would have that. The camera was like, I saved up for too long. It was too expensive. It was a good camera, but it stayed in my pack and I never filmed with it. And then I got rid of it and got like a cheap camera that was good enough. And I had it out in the rain and the snow it was like, and I used it all the time. And so it's like the footage you get is better than what you don't get. my suggestion when people ask, what should I get for a camera? Is like something that you can have out and like just use all the time. And honestly, man, cell phones are like, my dad, when he goes hunting, he's just like using his phone all the time, and he comes back and he's got like some really cool stuff. Cause he's just like, with phones now, man, you can get some really great stuff, some good quality, and it's accessible. Somewhere where you can get to it and whatever. And that's all you really need. Like just to have something to capture that's easy to get to. And you're going to, whatever you're using is the best thing to have.
For sure, because, I mean, like you said, if it's in your backpack, number one, it's a hassle to dig it out. And also, by the time you've dug it out, whatever you were trying to capture, like, the moment has passed. And it could be even, your buddies are talking and smiling, but it was just kind of like if you would have just had that at the handy, like the handy cam, like, boom, just record a little, genuine moment. But then, like, by the time you go, oh, let me get my pack out. Like, number one, they're acting weird.
Can you guys keep doing that really cool thing you're doing?
Yeah. Keep acting natural.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, I mean, I'll throw this out there too. How many viral videos are out there that look like they were filmed on a 1995 bag phone or toaster? I mean, you watch it and everything is grainy and whatnot, but there is a hilarious or like awe-inspiring moment there in the video, and everybody wants to watch that video, even though it is terrible quality. So, I mean, the better quality is always welcome. But if you have, to your point, Remi, like if you got the cell phone and you can record something that tells an awesome story or shows an awesome experience, I mean, it's gonna be worth watching and looking back on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know even personally, I mean, so much of it is just like, well, I guess I know in life, like my favorite memories are hunting and fishing. Like, I mean, and family. Crystal, you're not listening, but just let the record show, and family. But
we'll tell the stenographer.
But some of that stuff is like, maybe it's like you had to take some extra time, or it's kind of a pain to get. But when you have it, like I don't know, I look back on it constantly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You know what I've noticed is like over time, I never thought that I would forget certain stories or hunts, and there's some stories that I remember being like really. Like I would tell all the time. And then I just got sick of telling those stories or whatever. And now I was thinking back, I was like, I ran into someone and they mentioned something, and it kind of sparked a memory of like, I completely forgot about that and don't even remember all the details. And it made me feel really bad, like about losing something that I, for a very long time, deemed very important and then just completely forgot about.
Yeah.
And I noticed that like when I have photos and when I have the videos and I'm looking at them, and it's like, it refreshes my memory in a really clear way to like, you really do have to like remember your memories in some ways. And so like, those experiences, many of them, I think, it'd be nice not to have a camera, just enjoy the moment and remember the memory. But some of those memories you actually end up losing over time. And there's things where I remember setting up the camera and taking a picture or a video of a certain tree on the hill. And then I was like walking by it the other day. And I was like, dude, I took a picture. I was like with my wife, and I was like, I took a picture of that exact tree. Just like as soon as I saw it, I remembered like I was in this exact spot, took a picture, and this happened. And it was like all those memories came flooding back because I keep looking at that picture that was 10 years old. Yeah, like stuff like that is like I really enjoy that aspect of having that catalog of keeping some really cool memories and experiences alive for myself personally, not for any other reason.
How weird is the human memory? How you can forget something, but then something can all of a sudden make you remember it. So it was like, it was always there. Your brain just didn't know where to find it.
Oh, yeah. I can't count the times you're like, oh, yeah.
It's like your brain winds up becoming like a house, and the fresh memories are all the stuff that's upstairs that you left on your kitchen counter, and then all the stuff you forgot is the crap down in your unfinished basement that you never know about until you move.
That's a good
and
analogy.
Then you're like, oh crap, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I held on to that.
For those of you out there who don't have basements too, I don't know what room that is for you. The crawl space, shed? How does that work?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
It's a very Wisconsin thing to have a basement. I know there are basements in lots of places, but I've heard it's also a very...
I didn't grow up in basement country. Is Nevada basement country?
It is not basement country. If you have a basement, you're a creeper.
Oh, that's funny.
But people that did have basements, you were like, "Whoa, this is so cool!"
You like live underground. Wow.
Then in
Like
Wisconsin, is like we're 100% weirdos.
yeah. Well, I know sometimes
yeah.
like if I've been over to a place where there is no basement, I'm like, "Where's the basement?" We got a crawl space, but so regarding getting back on track here, so talking about some of the original stuff that you did some filming of, and when you watch the Trailblazer segment too, you get to see some of that footage, which is I think is super awesome to look at too. I mean, especially when seeing some of the stuff that you're putting out now and comparing, contrasting.
I mean, it's some OG,
very
throwback, cool footage.
OG. I'm surprised you didn't have like really big glasses and a thick mustache, because every time I think I see. It's not that I think you're that old, but just anytime I think of like OG film, I think of everybody having thick glasses and a mustache. But anyway,
I did have those thick glasses and I had some. I don't think any of that footage. I had some long hair back in the day, but I don't think any of that footage made it.
Funny how that all seemingly got oddly destroyed.
Somehow I didn't send that in.
Yeah. What kind of stuff you got into it a little bit in terms of the gear and whatnot, but I picture the amount of gear that it sounds like you take out in the field now. Like you said, it's pretty heavy. There's a lot of stuff that you take out there, and I know that in discussing your DIY start to it, your approach, just kind of getting what you could and documenting with what you had. You're probably starting out with relatively minimal gear, and I can imagine then now what you've pared down a little bit. Did you ever find yourself in the middle somewhere where you'd become totally overbloated with gear, like many of us do with non-filming gear? You all of a sudden got a little bit too starry-eyed when you started flipping through the XYZ catalog, and you sort of did the old add to cart, and the next thing you know, you're pretty much ready for the next apocalypse, but then you actually look back and you're like, I didn't really use 75% of that stuff. Did that ever happen to you? Were you ever carrying basically an entire Hollywood movie set with you out there? And
I think that's what he does, Jim.
I know.
Yeah, even more so. Yes. I mean, there has been many items that I have taken around the globe that never got used. When drones first came out, I carried this giant thing in a case everywhere I went. I used it once. You're just like, there's some stuff, it's like, why wouldn't you use it? It's like, well, there's a pain in the ass factor. There's actually, here, I'm going to jump off screen for a second. I'm going to grab something if I don't knock over my whole setup.
Visual aids.
Okay, this thing, I think this case has got this thing's like 30 pounds. And I take this around everywhere, and there's we're going to do a show and tell. I've got some lenses that I've carried in some horrible, horrible places that I've never used. This lens right here. Oh,
that is a big lens.
That's a large.
I don't know lens terminology very well, but is that what they call a telephoto lens?
It is a telephoto lens. It is a 50 to 500. The thing is like a brick, and I've carried this thing into places that a 50 to 500 should never go, and haven't used it. So, I've used it on some stuff, and when I do use it, damn, you're like, whoo, should use that more often. But it's just that same pain. It doesn't matter how many times you do it, how good you get at it. The whole pain in the ass factor of digging something out, swapping the lenses, doing that whole thing is it's a barrier to doing it. And you're like, oh man, or is it worth getting that out? And you can't carry it, out. And I still bring it a lot of times for certain things. I'm like, man, I want some really good wildlife footage. And then it's like those trips where you don't see jack. And then the trips where you where you see just so much stuff. You're like, man, if I got those rams butting heads on that 500 millimeter, whoo, I'd be some National Geographic stuff. And yet you're like, but I left it at the trailhead because it was just way too heavy. So it's just one of those things. There's just, I've had, I brought all kinds of slider stuff back in the day when those were cool. And I just thought,
ooh,
trying to keep up with what was, it's so funny because when we started the solo thing, everyone, I don't think people got it. They were just it was kind of it was good enough to be a bad filmed hunting show, and they didn't like really understand the fact of like how hard it was to do yourself, and
Right.
like we were still kind of new at it. And so it was constantly like trying to make it look like shows that everybody else was filming. And I think that was like a blessing and a curse at the same time, because it really caused us to like expand the way that we captured things. But it also was like, you just can't do some of this stuff on your own. And you end up carrying way too much stuff. And like, you know, I'd have like a boom mic that's like this big. And I've carried some just ridiculous stuff that should not. And you know, you're like comparing yourself to a show that guys have 3 camera guys and they're hunting from a tree stand, and you're like 7 miles into the backcountry trying to do the same thing. And you're like, I am an idiot.
It is funny. We've even had some occasional videos where we're not set up in a studio with multiple cameras and whatnot. And it is funny. I think it's also sometimes on the viewer to understand what it is that they're watching. Because I can't tell you how many times I've seen comments like, oh, the lighting is a little off, or oh, the sound seems like it could be better. And you're thinking to yourself,
well, you don't want to know.
Yeah, sorry. We'll let the producer and the director and the whatever, all the people on set know next time.
Yeah. You're like, it's like if you rolled out of bed, you know, and someone's like, "Oh, you look pretty bad." And you're like, "Yeah, well, you know, whatever." Or they're like, "Oh, you just get out of bed?" And you're like, "Yeah." But it's like if you got ready for an hour and then went out and they're like, "Damn, looks like you just got out of bed." You're like, "Why I oughta."
Exactly.
This is how, though, like, you know, and like, I mean, this is how I know that you and Tim are awesome at solo filming, because when I watch an episode of Solo Hunter, I forget that you guys are doing it yourself. And then I have to remind myself, or maybe like a moment will like come in where like I can, you know, maybe it's like maybe more obvious that you're self-filming or something like that. I'm like, oh yeah.
There's no one else there.
There's no one else there. And yet, yeah, like you're talking about, oh, you got the wide with this camera, and then like, you know, the POV, and then this one over here, and this one's, you know, I mean, so anyway, my hat really does go off to both of you guys, because it's quite the process and the accomplishment, and it turns out to be just, in my opinion, some of the most dynamic, cool hunting footage out there. So
yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
I would love to see the like Onyx footprint or whatever, where it shows you your trail that you've walked of you guys, because it would just be completely
backtrack.
Yep. Oh, went forward 2 steps, back 2 steps, went that way that much, went back, you know, and setting all these cameras. You guys must be in shape from all these moving around and setting cameras and stuff. I mean, not in addition to just
in shape or just like dumb enough to not care. And I think it's the dumb enough to not care.
It's so true though.
You're
like
getting those steps in.
I was joking like kind of earlier when like, oh, you stalked that mule deer twice, but like I watched some of the stuff and I'm like, he had to do that twice. Like,
oh yeah,
you had to sneak up on the deer twice.
There's been a lot of stalks where I'm like, there's absolutely no way I can be quiet and get the camera there and my bow. And I've stalked within 30 yards of a trophy mule deer, like twice, like literally crawl up, set my bow down, crawl back, get the camera, crawl up, set the camera up, and like do that the entire way, and then get there. I mean, I did it a couple of years ago on one, and it was like, it was a bedded buck, and then I'm sitting there at 30 yards just waiting for this buck to come out from this tree, and then the wind swirled and got me, and I'm like, damn it. It wasn't even the camera stuff. It's just like the stuff you can't control. And of course, I kept turning the camera on, and like, because you just don't, I'm like, okay, is it gonna, like twitch, and I'd turn the camera on, like, and then, I just turned the camera off to save battery and stuff. Because you're like, you don't know, like the startup time, it could stand up, and so you're just like constantly running through. And of course, it was like I just turned the camera off, and the wind switched, and the buck ran away, and I didn't even get footage of it running off. And it's like, well, I can't even use this now. Well, awesome. I mean, I don't know how many stalks I've done or whatever that's like it gets blown, and you just don't even have something to support it to like show or share. So
it's proof, man, that Mother Nature, God, whatever, just loves messing with us. You bring an umbrella out, it doesn't rain. You forget it at home, it does rain. You go out with your 500 millimeter telephoto lens and you don't see anything. You leave it at the trailhead, you see everything. I mean, it's just like you turn the camera off, something happens, you leave it on. I've noticed that actually a lot. And I was going to ask you about that in terms of how much your camera is on and recording. Do you it sounds like obviously now my question was going to be before you said what you said. Do you hit record and then never hit it again until the end of the day and just have to sift through, 10 hours of footage? Or how are you determining when you hit the record button and when you don't? Because I don't know, my FOMO would always be thinking, if I turn it off now, I'll save some battery, but I'm probably going to miss the thing that pops out.
Right. So, I mean, that ties into the next question I was going to ask, particularly in the backcountry, and I think these are connected, is like, how are you managing your battery life in the backcountry? Because it is finite. I know you're carrying multiple batteries, but still, like, I mean, you could have cold weather, and maybe that's sapping a battery or something like that. So how are you making those decisions to turn the camera on?
Yeah. I mean, it really just depends on the trip, but mostly I try to be, I mean, there's certain situations where you go, okay, you've just learned, like, here's the situations where you go over with it. Here's the situations where you go under. Because, like, I mean, you're constantly, like, juggling that battery life. I've got limited camera battery. I've got limited memory cards. There's been times where I've filmed let's say, I don't know, what are they, 23-minute episode, and we've cut it out of 28 minutes of footage. Like, you get really good at knowing when to turn the camera on.
Wow.
Like, no joke, like, super lean. Or maybe even, like, 20, like, and then there's some where you get 150 hours of footage, and you just, like, and you like still, sometimes the ones that are lean are actually better because it's like I turn that on with a very specific purpose and it's going in there. And it's like gives you less to work with when you've got a lot of filler. But now it's like in those moments that are, I kind of like hit like on the stock, like as I'm moving in, getting close, I hit record and then it's on and then I stop it and then hit it again and just like constantly double check and keep making sure. But you're constantly juggling the battery and the memory card and all that. And a couple things I always have is I always have spare batteries and spare memory cards on my person. Because there's been many a times when I'm like there and I'm like, oh, it's like deet, 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 battery dead. Or 5 minutes left on your memory card. You're like, no. So, and it'll continue to happen. Like, I still forget it. I mean, I forget stuff all the time. So it'll happen again. I try it.
That's a good tip, though. I mean, it kind of falls in line with having that camera at the ready and not buried in your pack. I'm sure kind of at one of those critical moments. Don't want to be like, oh, which pocket in my pack was that memory card buried in? Oh, I think it's under my sandwich. Like having that, ready to rock. Because I mean, I would assume that basically when those batteries decide to die really is at the most critical moment generally. So.
Oh, every time. Yeah. That's why I say, like, earlier I was like, I don't really use the GoPros anymore. Because, no joke, every time I go to need it, the battery's dead. So I'm like, it's like goes off in my pocket. Or it's just like, it's just one of those things. It's just me and that thing have just a love-hate relationship. So I'm just like, I hate you. I'm going to leave you. But then I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to just be able to not have to think about for a second camera angle. So I just go back and forth. But yeah, it's inevitably you run out of memory card and battery at the most inopportune time. It's just like you said. If I pack my rain gear just so it doesn't rain. It's like
exactly.
You try to stick it to Murphy, you just like carry everything.
Yeah. Take that. So we covered, I think, a lot of the challenge, because I mean, it's just challenging. Like the facts of the matter is this is taking on like a huge challenge. What are like some of the best memories that you've come away with? You're like, oh my gosh, like everything worked out. Like it's almost like, even like using that analogy of bow hunting, like, oh my gosh, I killed a mule deer with my trad bow. Like apparently you can film yourself killing a mule deer with the trad bow. But like what are those things, or what's that win where you're like, oh my gosh, like this was like the biggest accomplishment that I did filming or solo filming?
I think I did an episode for Solo Hunter with the recurve hunting mule deer. I think that was one that I just like, I didn't really think it was going to be possible in the beginning, and was kind of told like it would just never work. And I had a tag that was conducive to it, but I also didn't want to shoot like a small deer on a good tag. So I was kind of like trophy hunting mule deer spot and stock, self-filming with a recurve. That was like kind of insane.
Oh man, there's your YouTube title clickbait right
I
there.
was gonna say, was that the title of the episode?
I think it was too long for that. I think like that one was probably like one of the things that like after I did that, I didn't try it again. I self-filmed a whitetail hunt with my recurve, but that was I was like, I don't know if I have the like energy to do that another time. And it like worked out. You know, you're just like, I was literally like after I shot that buck, just like shaking in a fairly uncontrollable way because there was just like so much time spent like trying to make it happen, and it was cool. It was like a really memorable thing. And then I found like there's been times. It's kind of weird where I kind of feel like sometimes I feel like I have to be filming. Whereas like I went on a hunt and it was like a really important tag to me. And I was like, this hunt's more important to me than the filming, so I'm not going to film. And I like didn't film and nothing happened. And then I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to film, and like started filming and then was successful. So I was like, well, maybe, it's like, it's just like the universe saying like, you better film everything. And it's like, that's happened so many times that I'm like, now it's almost like I feel like if it's one of those, if I'm not filming, then it's just not going to happen. Or you're like, on TV, things work out way better, so I should just film it.
Yeah. That is true.
It always works out in the end on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, I watch some other, I'll like watch a hunting show or something. I remember some like Eastman's ones or some older ones, and I'm like, man, every time they hunt in Nevada, they find a buck bedded behind a rock in the shade with the wind blowing uphill. And I'm like, I never find that. It must only happen on television. Like there's just certain things that you kind of think like, oh, well. And maybe that comes down to the editing of it as well. But you're like, man, it just seems to work out more for me personally when I'm filming. So I kind of stick to it. But I think that mule deer hunt is one that really stands out in my head. I don't know. I think there's a lot of them. Every hunt that I've done, I think, is just kind of different. Last one recently that I thought was one of my favorites, just hunting fallow deer in New Zealand. The buck I ended up getting, I think it might be like a world record with a bow. I don't know. That was one that I did get scored and sent in, but not the size of it, just like having it all work out and like one of those stocks where it's like, I messed up a couple stocks before, like one was the camera, one was me just doing bad stuff. And then ended up like so some of those trips are like the ones that are memorable where it's like the camera jacks you up, but then at the end you're like, you get something and you're like, wow, that was cool to have be able to go back and watch that. I think that's fun. Like it's just fun for me to go back and watch it as anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah.
Well, and like you said earlier, because of the challenge, it probably just by the nature of it, it extends your hunt. Like you're gonna have more mishaps. You're gonna have more blown stalks, and ultimately, in some ways it can be like nerve-wracking and I haven't filmed that much, but I think of even just hunting in general. Like you've got a tag that you're really excited about or a hunt you've been waiting for all year, and it starts getting a little bit later in the hunt and you haven't been successful yet, and like it gets to be nerve-wracking. But then even if you aren't or you are, you've still created more memories along the way than if you would have just, gunned one down the first night, even if it was a big one,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the whole, for me, I love every aspect of the hunt. And like I said earlier, it's like I never wanted to go on a hunt and it be over the first day because I love hunting so much. It's like if I go out and fill my tag, you got one tag a year. If I go out and fill that on the first day, dude, I'm done hunting for the season. That sucks. Like I would rather just shoot a small deer on the last day and just get a chase deer every day. If I got 10 days to hunt, I want to hunt 10 days. And that's just the nature of how I like to do things. Not everybody's like that. Everybody's got different things that they're into, or different, like some people just want to go out and be successful as soon as possible, or whatever. Like everybody, hunt how you want to hunt, man. Don't hunt how I hunt. I won't hunt how you hunt, but we can all learn from each other. And, you know, I mean, if you want to be more successful in certain things, yeah, there's certain things you should probably do. But as far as like the enjoyment of hunting and what you like to get out of it, I think that should be always personal. Whether it's, you know, for me, part of it is filming and sharing that, and I think that that's something that I enjoy out of it. If I stop enjoying that, you won't see any more of it from me. Like I'm not that committed to something that I don't love to do. So it's just like I do it because I love it, and so I'll continue to do that.
Awesome.
Whoa. That was well put.
Makes perfect sense.
That was well put, yeah. I was also thinking to myself how, Mark, I don't know if we're the patient type.
Not as.
Like that.
I know that. I know that.
Even though, to Remi's point, we do love hunting.
Absolutely. And like, I mean, some of my most memorable hunts are the ones where it like came down to the wire at the last day.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like, oh man, you've been hunting hard and you don't think it's gonna work out, and you just keep going and going and going because you never know. And I have had hunts end in the first 5 minutes, and I've had hunts end in the last 5 minutes. And I think you just got to remind yourself that it really can happen at those times or any time in between.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think you mentioned it real quick a little bit ago was editing, Remi. So when you first started out, were you? I know it sounded like you took a course in, you know, some video related stuff. Were you already up to snuff on editing? Because I mean, I've got thousands of videos on my phone. None of them have ever gone anywhere because they've never been edited. You know, they're just kind of just footage. You know, and so that is one of the difficult things, is taking it from the memory card and actually making it viewable in some fashion. What was your learning curve there?
Yeah, I mean, I actually like I said, I made videos just for personal use, and I started editing when I was like 13 years old, and it wasn't like it was on a computer. And actually, the first edit I did, I was like, I didn't have a computer that I could edit on, so I just would like have a tape, and then I'd put 2 VCRs, and then like record, and then like stop, and then like I did that, but
nice.
People would be like, "What's a tape?" Like in cut camera editing, but yeah, I mean, I started editing like fairly early, and I did take like. In school, I did edit a lot of stuff. Like even in high school, like I edited like all the like senior videos and all that stuff. So I was like editing along with filming like for a long time. Okay. But all the solo hunter stuff, Tim does all the editing. I haven't edited in years because I just don't have the time. And that's why I have like you say, I have more footage of like awesome stuff that'll probably never be seen by anyone because I just haven't had the time to edit it. Like I get all these grandiose ideas, but Tim has limited time. I have limited time. I'm like, man, I just wish somebody could just edit this stuff for me because I really haven't done that in a while. But I did, was it last week, this month, I jumped back in the old edit bay because with COVID and everything going on, I needed something edited and I just didn't have the means or time it just didn't work out. So I had to do it myself. And I was like, at first it was a little like slow, but I was like, dang, man, it's kind of like riding a bike. I was like, man, this actually, I mean, I thought it turned out good. Other people might think it sucks, but it's like, dude, you know, I was like, man, I actually still have some edit chops. I'm like, I should really stretch that muscle a little bit and edit some more stuff. But Tim's always done a good job with it. So I'm like, and so
right
to say that I have recently edited some stuff. It's if you want to see what my editing looks like, pretty soon I'm going to release. It's a turkey hunting video.
Oh, cool!
And I just partnered with a video game company. So and it's I kind of like put a little teaser up the other day, but it's more of like a how-to tips thing because they realized like their players, they did like a survey and a ton of their players are really interested in hunting, but don't hunt or haven't like know nothing about real hunting. So they wanted like someone to kind of like do kind of like some basic intro to hunting type how-to videos on stuff that's like accessible, like turkeys and, you know, some other stuff that lines up well with this game. So, and then there's some other stuff that we're going to talk about later. I don't know, when's this podcast airing?
This podcast is probably airing in the 25th of this month.
Oh, yeah. So it'll probably be right around then.
Cool. Awesome.
But, yeah.
Dude, that's really awesome. I wish more video games would do that.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, if you're going to play this video game, why not know how to do it in real life too?
Well, and you do see that. I mean, you see, well, I guess hopefully there's, a recruitment angle to it. Like you said, it sounds like a lot of these folks, they have some interest in it, but like you said, you may not get the most realistic portrayal. And it sounds like these guys are working hard to kind of give that, authentic window into the activity. So, maybe they'll go from the game console to the mountains.
Yeah, I think it's one of those cool things. It's like, okay, it sparks interest. And actually, I'll be, like if you start up the game or new to the game or whatever, I'll have like a little 2D character that kind of helps you out throughout the thing, giving like real life tips and suggestions and stuff to kind of like do like a cross platform promotion between two worlds of like, like for people that play the game that don't hunt, here's a place where you can go to learn about it. And then people that maybe do hunt and want to play the game, they can see my face and here's some real tips too. Yeah. Either way, it's like cool. Based in truth, It's kind of not necessarily a plug for it, but it just brought it up of like the edit thing. It was like, that video I edited. So coming back to the editing thing, I'm super stoked on editing right now, actually. I'm like, nice. I got to do more of this. So maybe I will jump into that archive and start like cutting some stuff up.
That would be...
Editing is a whole nother beast.
Jim, you got into some editing here.
Well, I mean, I've gotten into some editing, but it's like, I mean, if anybody ever asked me to do like, oh, can you make an effect? I'd be like, no, I can basically just do the snip and put two things together function.
Well, you tell a very nice story.
Snip and smash.
Snip and smash. Yeah, that's my style.
It's raw. It's real.
I like it.
At least that's what I portray it as. It's like you said, purposeful. Oh, that's what I was going for. I was going for all the jump cuts.
Yeah.
I was going for the uncomfortable camera angle and uncomfortable amount of time spent on one scene.
Breaking the fourth wall. Is this thing on?
Why is there a 3.5 minute crotch shot right in the middle?
It's abstract.
Yeah,
abstract.
You know what? If you don't get it, you'll never get it.
Exactly. It's your fault. Also, I'm charging $100,000 for this clip.
Worth every penny. Awesome. I'm trying to think. I feel like I have a million questions. I had another question a little bit ago.
Yeah.
And then it escaped me. But we've covered equipment. We've covered techniques, challenges.
How about audio? Because you can't have good video without good audio. So you mentioned that you've taken a boom mic out there before, obviously, and that's maybe a tad bit difficult. We have a guy here who loves the boom mic.
Loves the boom mic.
Big boom mic guy.
When we went on that Coos deer hunt, actually, so I mean, Remi Warren, frequent guest on the podcast. So
boom mic.
You were our I guess one of our guides along our quest to hopefully get a not in real life informational. We did a sweet podcast on Coos deer hunting, javelina. Check it out if you're interested in any of those things, everybody. But so we're talking with Nate about the equipment that he was going to bring.
We made it to Arizona, by the way, Remi. I don't know if you ever heard.
And back.
I assued as much.
Okay, all right. Anyway,
sorry, I heard Mark's missing a kidney, but other than that, it's all good.
That's why you get two.
Yeah,
right?
But hey, I mean, it was really nice of them to put him in the bathtub with all that ice like that.
Yeah, a nice note saying, hey, here's some instructions, best practices, good luck.
Anyway, carry on.
But anyway, so it was just funny because Nate loves the boom mic and hasn't just like no fault of his own, not a ton of hunting experience. So like we're going through the kit we're gonna bring, and he's like, oh yeah, and then I got the boom mic, and I'll follow you around. I'm like, Nate, I don't think that's really gonna work.
Yeah, it is. It is difficult, and then when you have, certainly people like to hear things well, and there's a lot of sounds out in nature, especially when you're hunting. Your ears are a very important sense. So there's some things the person on camera might hear and they perk up at, and you don't really notice if you're listening, and then you didn't catch it on the camera's audio or on the external audio or whatever. So how are you navigating the audio part?
I mean, for the first portion of doing it, I didn't care about it. I was like, it's too difficult.
Sure.
I can't do all things. Can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
Audio, I'm not good at. Let's just leave it alone. And I'd just be like, on camera mic and a lot of wind sound. Cool. Everyone will get over it.
It's authentic.
Yeah, and then we kind of like, as things got better, I just kind of, and as I got better at stuff, I started adding like an audio kit. Now I just use either like a little tiny shotgun mic on the camera mounted on there, or I have like a wireless lapel mic that I use a lot. That's just another thing that's like batteries. And man, I did something. Well, actually, just that same turkey hunt that I did, the first like portion of it, I was filming and there was no audio because my camera got damaged. I sent it in. They replaced like they just fixed it. Whatever. They sent it back to me, but that was the first trip I'd used it on since I got it sent back, and I didn't realize that like all my settings were changed. So it was like I have my camera set in a certain way with all my settings, and one of those settings is specific to my microphone. And when I was filming, I didn't even think twice about it. I didn't, I got like halfway through, and then I'm like, go back to watch something. I'm like, why can't I hear this? Is something wrong? And then I realized, the setting wasn't set for that microphone because everything was like reset. So that
you just explained to everybody that you were doing artful hunt miming the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're just listening, I was doing like a podcast talking, but no words were coming out of my mouth.
Exactly.
We could see it.
It doesn't translate to radio.
Still, we're in 2020 relearning how the radio works. So, but yeah, so a little bit of a sound setup there that helps get some better audio for you. The wind noise is killer though, man. I mean, that is something, like you said. I mean, there's some stuff in editing you can do to kind of cut down on it, but at the same time, part of it is like, hey, we're hunting, it's outside, there's wind. Sorry.
Well, sometimes you hear that too, and like, I mean, I think maybe I'm just like not, don't have good taste in video, but I think it adds to it. You're like, oh man, that sounds nasty out there. Like you can really,
yeah,
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's realistic.
I'd say so.
Yeah, but audio's tough. I don't know. I'm not an audio pro, but I do what I can.
What's like maybe the biggest pitfall like somebody wanting to get into it could avoid, or like what's the one thing, or maybe one or two things, something that you learned along the way that you're like, oh man, like don't do that, or do this or avoid that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I mean, like I said earlier, having the camera ready and just like getting a camera that you can use, and then like if you're spot and stalking and trying to film something, this is like if you're trying to film your buddies or whatever, like having that camera out and ready. But also like if I'm stalking, like I have my tripod set up. Like people are like, how do you stalk in? And it's like I have my tripod set up so I could just set the camera down when I'm by myself. But as I'm moving on to like different terrain or hill types, I'm constantly adjusting that tripod before moving. So at any given moment, I can set it down, anticipating that like, okay, this leg has to be like this, and I can all do it all one-handed while holding, because that's the thing, is like getting good at doing stuff with one hand. So I'm generally holding my bow with my left hand. My camera's always in my right hand, and it's like set and whatever. And I use those bow slings. So Tim's makes those solo hunter bow slings. I use those a lot because it's like I need two hands for some stuff just to like set the tripod and whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like being ready and anticipating how long it takes to do everything, because one of the other things would be like, if I'm stalking in, just like having my release at a place that's like ready, and my maybe nock and arrow, obviously using safety and common sense, but like being a little more ready. So the hunting portion of things takes less time, where it's like, all right, I'm ranging the animal and I'm counting my steps down. So if I get set up and the camera ready and I don't have time to rearrange it, dude, I've got a good estimate, a more educated guess than like, oh shit, I don't know. So like when I'm at 100 yards, I'm like, 100 yards, okay, to that bush. And then I'm like, every step I take, I'm like, like count, most of my steps, like, or if I'm crawling, like I try to anticipate, how many yards I'm going as I'm moving in and counting down and making good estimates. So if I have to, like, that's what happens most of the time is like you get the camera set up, you hit film, and then it's like something happens and you either have time to shoot or you have time to range, and you don't have time for both.
Yes. Very true.
And that's huge. And there's been a lot of times where it's like I didn't have time to range, and I used my countdown method, and my countdown method was 10 yards off, and that sucks. But for the most part, like you get pretty good at it, and like the more it's like taking the time when you've got the opportunity to do that, and then. So just so you're just more streamlined in the moment, really, and that goes for any kind of hunting, like whether you're stalking or whatever. You just being at the ready really helps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For sure, yeah.
And also things like it's like, all right, maybe you're rifle hunting. I see this all the time, and I think it's a mistake like a lot of hunters make. It's like, all right, you've spotted the animal, you're stalking in, you're on the final stalk, you're within range, and like the elk gets up and like people grab their binoculars and look through their binoculars. And I'm like, dude, be on a rest and look through your rifle scope. Don't be, I've been guiding, and I'm like, last year I was actually, we crept in on this bull, and I'm like, normally I'm paying a lot of attention to the hunter, but somebody that I've hunted with a lot. So I'm like, they should, and I'm looking at the elk, and I'm like, all right, he's just behind the tree. See him? Yeah, I see him. Okay, cool. Like, all right, he's just going to step out from that tree. He's like, okay, yeah, I see him. He's like, all right, go ahead and take the shot. And no shot goes off. And I look over, and he's like looking through his binoculars. And then he puts his binoculars down, puts the rifle up, and then the elk's gone. I'm like, damn, dude, go. Why? Don't do that. Please stop doing that. Just like be ready when the opportunity happens. Because sometimes, when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, yeah, it's there. It should be easy. And then those opportunities come and go so fast. Like you just got to be on it.
Well, there you go into your back to the thing you're talking about early on. It makes you a better hunter. I mean, you do have to be very, very proactive, because you can't be, when you're trying to do two things at once, you can't be reactive. Because to your point, it's just like when something presents itself in a hunting situation. You get time to range, you get time to shoot, you get time to put your I don't know, whatever. It's whenever it's crunch time, you get time to focus on one thing, the hunting, or you get time to focus on trying to scramble a camera rig together.
Yeah. I think the other thing, it's like made me better to it, just like reading animals and understanding like how they're going to react to certain situations. I see it all the time where, like being a guy, like I still guide full time, and it's like you get to interact with a lot of hunters in a lot of scenarios. So you just see like things that I might take for granted that people haven't learned or don't think about. But just like really understanding how an animal is going to react. There's so many times where, like if you know how an animal's reacting, you can kind of anticipate like, okay, here's what they generally do. So there's many times where I'll set the camera up away from where the animal is, so I know I don't have to move it or zoom out enough where I'll catch it. Like kind of like trying to anticipate those things. And also just the things of like, think about those instances when, I don't know, like the best way to explain it, but there's like those instances when you're the hunter and you're in the moment, like time seems so different. It's like the buck looks at you and you're like, you get this rushed reaction and you're like, oh, he sees me, I need to do something. And then you go and you draw back or you make a rush shot, and then things get messed up. But like if you're the silent observer, like as the guide, you're like, you've got a little skin in the game, but you see like the big picture better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you notice like understanding animal, like he's just looking this direction. Like I don't know how many times I've like been a long ways away and like somebody like looking through the spotting scope and like, oh, he's looking at us, he sees us, and like get that panic, and in that panic you make bad decisions, and you're just like, no, he's just like looking around. What if we were over there, he would be looking that way. That's the way he's feeding, the way he's facing, the way he's looking for danger, but he is not yet alarmed. Like look at his body position, look at how his ears, like look at, is his like, you understand that animal, and then you're better able to like make a methodical move at the right times. Because I think that happens so many times. Like you get panicked, you get rushed, you get like how many times like it's even happened to me. You be at full draw and that deer looks your way and you're like, oh shit, he's gonna run, I better shoot. And then in real in like if you were looking at it a different way, he's like, yeah, you just looked that way, and then you probably would have waited 10 more seconds and been fine, and you messed it up. But
yeah, I'm glad.
I think that plays a lot into it.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I was thinking it as well, especially when, I mean, if we were in an ideal situation, it'd be like the Truman Show where you're walking around some bubble with cameras in every corner, and then that way you could get a shot at every angle, and regardless of which way the deer or whatever it was went, you'd have an angle or a shot of it. But you're going out there with, even when you're describing lots of cameras, 3 cameras having on you or whatever, that's a fair amount. But still, that's only 3 camera angles, and the deer has the entire its world to go within, or the elk or whatever you're hunting. So I was figuring it would have to take a pretty good understanding of what an animal is going to do, and the idea of even setting up a camera that's looking in a place where the animal isn't currently, and expecting or predicting that it will move into the frame. I mean, talk about a bit of a leap of faith there with setting that up, because then you're going to go and try and stalk in on it, and you're far away from that camera. You can't obviously go back and like change it. But yeah, that you got to be pretty keen.
I mean, pretty keen, pretty astute, and I think that just comes from, excuse me, a lot of time watching animals and getting close to them, and seeing when you do something and seeing how they look when they're nervous, and like you said, being able to tell the difference between like, oh my God, he's looking at us, and that could even be at close range, right? A buck just turns his head and he looks at you, but he's maybe looking through you or beyond you. But I agree, it feels like he's like, you're like, oh my God, he's got us, do something. Panic.
Yeah.
Quick, panic. That's what I do.
Well, there's that. I mean, like if you go out, it's always the funny thing. Like people are like, man, the animals after the season weren't like, you could just, they weren't even spooked, or there's times where it's like before the season and you just have these encounters. Well, it's because you aren't like actively trying to shoot it. You aren't doing things that are in that like aggressive predator position. And sometimes I've gotten away with things that are like, just like calming down and like treating it like, all right, just another day. I'm just out here taking some video. I'm not even hunting. I'm just a camera guy. I'm just out here cameraing around. And then when you're not looking, I pull out my sharp, pointy stick. But, it's like one of those things. It's just one of those things where it's like, pay attention to how, well, I mean, even last year I was, we were out chasing we were chucker hunting. And it's like the chucker just, like a bird would jump up, and then like it would be hard to get kind of close shots or whatever. And they just seemed so wily and so smart and so cagey. And then like 2 weeks later, as the season was over, and I went to the same area chasing, looking for mountain lions. And it was like, I kept like jumping chucker at my feet. And I was like, damn, dude, they really quieted down after a week. And then it clicked in my brain. I was like, no, it's because a chucker jumps up at 40 yards, you get excited, you shoot at that chucker, and then all the other ones further away flush. But when you aren't shooting at that one, and it's like you just keep walking and quiet, and they keep jumping up close. So it's like one of those things like, hey, if I didn't panic on that first bird that jumped out at 60 or 70, I probably would have got in a little bit closer, and they all would have jumped at 15 like they are doing this week. So it's just like looking at it objectively sometimes.
Interesting. I like it.
There you have
That
it.
makes a lot of sense.
That it does.
I'll probably still just keep shooting because I won't be able to stop, but that makes a lot of sense.
Well, based on this last turkey season, I'd say, yeah.
2 for 3 is not bad.
No, 2 for 3 isn't bad. But the one that I was there to witness was I don't know. It was optimistic. I'd say you were optimistic.
I was optimistic. I fired more shots at one bird than I did at 2 other birds this year.
But hey, stuff happens.
You win some, you lose some.
Stuff happens. I can't talk. I missed a coos deer that I stalked to 25 yards. So it happens.
I'm talking about all this stuff, but the only reason I can actually talk about it is because I've made every mistake in the book, and some of the mistakes I've made have been multiple times in a row. Some I will never learn, but there are, there's a few things that you pick up over the years, and you're like, yeah, if you can, and a lot of times it's easier said than done, because there are those times where I have rushed, or it's like, man, it just happens. And that's why we keep doing it, right? So
Yeah.
like, it's not always the same. It's always, you get that excitement level, and it's like, yeah, that's what makes it hunting and makes it exciting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's like super cliche, but like if it wasn't exciting, you probably wouldn't be into it, or at least as much as you are. So
It's true. Nice.
Where are we at, Jim?
Oh, I think I think we're doing good on time. But I mean, really, this like we said, you ought to go and check out that Trailblazers video there. See some OG Remi Warren, and hopefully though I wish I remembered the exact name too for the listener out there who want to know the video side of things. Hopefully this answered some of those questions. But yeah. It is fun. It is fun listening to all of the behind the scenes of some of that stuff that we really like watching. 'Cause you watch it on YouTube, you watch it on Solo Hunter, you watch it all over the place, and knowing what's actually going on behind the camera. Or I guess a lot of times you're in front of the camera. You're not necessarily behind the camera, but it's
Both simultaneous.
yeah, you are both behind and in front of the camera. Knowing what's going on, though, behind it for that part of it is very interesting.
For sure.
So it's like lead, follow, or get out of the way, but it's just like lead and follow and be in the way.
You are all three at once.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
Sums it up. Yeah. No, I'm super excited for that video to come out. It was fun to just see some of those old clips and stuff. So yeah, if anybody's out there listening, check it out. It's fun to see where some of the older stuff, and yeah, that's it's fun. It's cool.
And maybe we this conversation and just even that project of digging through all that archive footage has inspired a new series of Remi Warren edited the OG clip.
We need to see some long hair.
archive.
We need to see some long hair
Yeah.
Remi videos.
Oh, I got some of those, man. The long hair. It was like long hair hippie goose hunting videos.
Oh, that sounds
Okay. Well, I mean, I think
I'll
you've
have to dig
essentially publicly promised everybody to show those
Yes.
videos. So
10 out of 10 would click on that YouTube title.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Sweet.
But awesome, Remi.
Yeah.
Or did you? Did I interrupt you?
I
Jim?
didn't
What do you have?
mean to step on your toes, Mark.
You didn't.
Go for it.
I was just gonna say, appreciate the time, man. It's always just super great chatting and a pleasure and insightful. Always learn something, and it's always a fun conversation. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad
Yeah.
I could do it. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Well, everybody, we will catch you next time. But as usual, let us know what other things you want to hear about. So this one, as we mentioned, kind of came as part of a listener request. So hit us up on Instagram. Hit us up in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you're only listening right now and you didn't get to see all of the awesome hand gestures and show and tell things that Remi did, maybe go back and listen again on YouTube. So. All right.
Awesome.
There he is. The telephoto lens is back out. All right. Sweet. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Remi. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.